Hey Chuck, so Brightline is in the news once again. They're really the masters of maximizing publicity and marketing. First of all, for a few different reasons, but we'll start to the other side of the country where they've gotten the green light and have begun selling bonds for their potential high-speed connection between California and Las Vegas. Are you excited?
I'm very excited about that connection. I think it's one that is long overdue in terms of the, time to travel between there. I think they're very popular destinations that are close together. And I think a lot of people would consider even hitting both of them in the same weekend or same trip. It's just that there's not really been a practical link to do so. Additionally, I think it will help them to, further develop their economies in both regions, which are kind of supportive of one another. I think with energy and everything now. And thirdly, I think long-term, especially with the news out of California recently about auto regulations and the types of vehicles that will be allowed on the road, I think more people will be looking for alternative travel solutions. And so I think for all of those reasons, this is a really great chance to be successful.
Yeah. I don't have numbers to back this up. It's just more perception for me. But I feel like the one difference between the Miami-Orlando connection and Los Angeles-Las Vegas is that market may be a lot more geared towards LA residents, California residents going out to Vegas, whereas, of course, as we've spoken about before, Orlando, Miami, they're really targeting a lot of tourists from outside the state or outside the country.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know that Miami right now, its most common international flight is to Sao Paulo. And I also know that, especially during Brazil holidays or breaks, that you see significant numbers at Disney World. So I could see many, taking that as a link to combine a beach vacation and, leisure during that time. I think that there is that possibility for outsiders of Vegas and LA too. But I think within Florida, people are maybe less likely to be going back and forth. And so I think you're correct. It's more of a outsiders vacation type trip.
Yeah. Well, whether you're a visitor to the state or you're a local, you resident in Los Angeles, I think the point still is that this is that sweet spot for Brightline of too close to fly and too far to drive. Right, around 250 miles with traffic can be much worse time-wise. So it makes sense. It's very exciting. I'm glad that they're making progress, I guess, which kind of brings us to news number 2 with Brightline, that there are rumors that they have reached a memorandum of understanding with a Tampa developer for potential sites for expansion to Tampa. What do you think of that?
Yes, so that's right. So I think Tampa is really trying to get in on the party with Orlando and Miami on this connection too. I think they really want to be competitive in the state in terms of their visibility and recognition. I think Daryl Shaw, as I remember, actually acquired the Tampa Park Apartments, which are the development immediately west of Ybor City. This is a site that previously was kind of considered for a Tampa Bay Rays stadium, and you never know, it still might revisit that. But I think that right now it really would be a convenient location with a significant amount of land that could be developed, and really I think would help link the Ybor to its other core areas such as downtown and Channelside and Water Street. So I think that there's a lot of promise there, especially if Tampa is willing to work with Brightline on what's present there.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's still very speculative. It's still very early stage. Clearly, they need to be doing these and having these talks because there's such a large lead time for major infrastructure projects like this one. So, they're talking about it now, but construction may not begin for, another 5 years or more. We might be looking at like a decade before this comes to fruition on a good timeline. So yeah, I'm glad that they're doing this talk. I think, Tampa is a huge market for them to be able to connect to, and considering where they are currently going, which is Orlando Airport, then to Disney, it really makes sense to make that short trip down I-5 to make it over to Tampa. So it makes sense, and I'm glad that they're exploring this. And it's just a very exciting time to be part of Brightline. It must be for people within the company. You've got these projects that you're trying to juggle, long distance, speculative. There's stuff that you're really trying to do within the state of Florida to kind of maximize, to kind of build out a more comprehensive network. And then locally in South Florida, you're really trying to maximize the potential of the rail line here, and which brings me to that third bit of news, that the city of Miami and Brightline are very, very close to reaching a deal for Brightline to operate a commuter rail line from downtown Miami to Aventura. And so that would be interesting. That's definitely a turn that's been coming slowly. But if you asked me 4 or 5 years ago, it was something that I would not have been expecting. So that, another thing there. Any thoughts on that, Chuck?
Well, I think one thing is, I would agree with you because, Miami, and especially suburban Miami outside of, the core, really loves its cars in spite of the density. It's really a place that, they have that tri-rail link now, but that's a very lengthy connection. It's not something that I think people would regularly travel on at this point. I'm not exactly sure about the numbers there, but I think that this is something that will help them. And also I think going beyond that, just to your point about Brightline, just that they were so, there were some questions that I had, when, Richard Branson and Virgin tried to enter this whole thing. And of course that officially now that partnership portion has ended, but they really seem to be securing good business partners and like connecting well with the cities that are along the network.
Yeah, they've done a good job with that. I think they need to, and I think that's why they're keeping themselves in that news cycle and in the conversation, because they really need to have sort of a positive, optimistic sort of view. People need to be rolling with them as they try to tackle something that's really never been done before. And so hopefully more power to them. You mentioned Tri-Rail. I think we'll see how this all shakes out, but this really kind of puts Tri-Rail in a tough position and hangs them out to dry, because this, if Brightline ends up operating this segment between Aventura and downtown Miami, it's what Tri-Rail was kind of positioning for and angling for previously. Yeah. So it'll be interesting.
It's a death knell, and I think to your point about Tri-Rail, it's one of the mistakes that has consistently been made, I think, in some of the regional commuter rail options is they just don't seem to build them where people go. I think you find that problem in Nashville. With how far out it goes, and it's a very sparsely used far out option. And even with Tri-Rail, I think a lot of the stations are not necessarily something that gets stuff built around it. This is it appears like a very smart plan where it's mindful of commuters that necessarily aren't in urban living, but at the same time, that mall and that area around it can be developed, I think, further to really fit the niche of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, that's always going to be the issue with public transit in America, at least, is the balance of what would be the most effective path versus the most cost effective, and so with a lot of commuter rail lines, you kind of have to balance where the rail and where the right of way already exists. And then do what you can to make the most sense.
Right.
So with Miami, I think the big question with that segment there is going to be what stops end up serving sort of the Edgewood, Wynwood areas of the urban core of Miami, because
that's a good point. Yeah,
there is a lot of development still to be done in those areas, and so that really could change the shape of what things look like in the next 5 years and 10 years and then into the future. So I
think it would tremendously shape the ridership if they had a Wynwood or because I mean, I'm sure there's apartment units and developments in those northern neighborhoods, which have seen so much investment just massively increasing. And so I think it would make little sense for them not to, if they're adding the link to Aventura, to at least have a few stations, really at some of those popular nodes of development and really, transit-oriented development, which is all too rare in the US, but I think that it would benefit the whole city and area tremendously.
Well, we're getting a little bit long here, but just to respond to that, the thing is, especially, we're talking about transit-oriented development, TOD. I mean, Wynwood has really done a great job. It's become a hot spot, and it's
Yes.
transformed itself this past decade or 2 decades, and so to wonder what the impact of the rail line would be to that area, it is a good question. Whereas you have certain areas that are more or less undeveloped that are ready to explode with potential TOD, and so maybe an area like that would be better served by a rail stop. So we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out. Of course, I'm not advocating for that. The more, the better, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how things shake out.
Yeah.